Vibrations of love. And some say love is a verb. But much deeper than that, love is a vibration. It is that energy that stirs the soul and opens up the heart. Vibrations of love call out to the divine that connects us with the beauty of life and the oneness of it all. I need not to say it with words, although it is always nice to hear. But greater still is to feel it. Vibrations of love lift me higher, and I fill the empty spaces within the soul. It is the divine in its purest essence. It is me at the height of my being. I am vibrations of love.
Have you been feeling overwhelmed, stressed, out of balance lately? Do you crave for a pocket of peace and tranquility in your busy life, but you struggle to find the time or space? Then we have the perfect solution for you, Meditation on Wheels. It's an RV sanctuary traveling in the metropolitan Washington D.C. area, offering transformative meditation experiences. It's a movable oasis of calm at your doorstep. Book us today to come to your business, school, government space, or event. Why? We bring the calm to you. meditationonwheels.com.
Hi everyone, Om Shanti. Welcome to The Next Normal. I'm your host, Sister Jenna, and I am so happy about our next normal. We just keep getting better and better, but I have missed all of you. It took us quite a little while to get the studio back up and running, and it's been nice to have this kind of a live, intimate relationship with everyone again. It has meant the world to me. So I have the fortune of a brother from Canada, Kessel, who has been visiting us for some time. And Kessel has this incredible sort of awareness about the role of men and how a man should be and how young boys should be, raised so that they can make great fathers, great husbands, great stewards of the society. So before coming on, I was telling Kessel, you brothers, you're the one that start all the wars. It's all your fault. We cooked though, we cleaned, we got everything together for you so you could feel confident enough to go out there on the battlefield. But I have thought to myself, what is it about when a soul is in a male body that he thinks differently? He has different needs. I don't know, relationships with a man and a woman tend to sometimes be quite an opportunity for a lot of growth. And today, in our part 1 series, I'm live here to speak to a young man who's very open and honest about the role of a man and how he feels men should show up in the world right now. So please welcome Kessel Calendar to The Next Normal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's all your fault why the world's a mess,
I don't know if I can if I can relate to that one that much, but
No, I don't mean that. But I'm just like, I get so perplexed. Right now in the United States of America, the whole country is focusing on one man.
right.
And it's almost as if he can do no wrong. And I wonder if it was somebody of color or if it was a woman, would it still be the same rules? Why is it different for certain souls? But that might be another conversation. What I'd like to learn from our time together is to help us to understand the thinking of a man.
Mhm.
Like, what is it about a man that he seems so detached? He seems quite focused on what he has to do in life. He's comfortable with sports, with things that, brah, let's go. Like, he's tough, He's comfortable with a woman who is very humble.
Mhm.
I've seen many relationships struggle if a woman starts to build herself. For some reason, sometimes the husbands become a little bit uncomfortable with her growth. But I think for beginners, give us a little insight into sort of like an average mindset of a man who wakes up, perhaps is single, goes through a job, is trying to build his career. What's his template like? Because you've been single and you've been out there in the world. What was the thinking like when you were single?
Wow.
Do you even remember?
I'm trying to go back to that. But no, I remember when I was younger, and in my teens into my 20s, I left home when I was around 18. I moved out on my own and went to a totally different city. I didn't know anybody there, and you kind of had to survive, and go through different challenges and obstacles. And one of the things that came out was, number one, the freedom that I had. I mean, I had the freedom as a kid growing up. There was no suppression or stuff like that of my male side or my female side in terms of that. With the family that I grew up in, I grew up in a matriarchal family as opposed to a patriarchal family. And so it taught me a different perspective, had a different perspective and perception of what a man should be.
So you think that you were different than your friends when you were single?
Yeah, because, I was thinking back. I was thinking when you had invited me to come on this interview. And I was looking back at when I used to work. I was in my 20s, my first job. I was working as a teenager, but I mean in terms of me being single at the time. And I was looking back at the men I used to work with. I was really reflecting on that one. And one of the things that I remember was, sometimes, and these were men from different nationalities, some West Indian, some Canadian. And I'd go to sit and have a chit chat. And I was in college, before that and stuff like that. And the conversation would all be about women. But it wasn't progressive conversation about women. It was pretty much derogatory sometimes and very oppressive. And to me, that was offensive, really offensive.
It's interesting to know that, in college or when you were younger, majority of the conversations that you can remember were men talking about women, sometimes derogatory. And how in the world did they find the time to run the world?
I think one of the things in terms of, it used to be, what was very interesting though, because you had two different camps in terms of men and how men saw things. For North Americans, white men, souls in white bodies, their conversations was about wealth.
How much money we're
How much
making,
money you're
what
making,
stocks are going.
And for black men or people of color, it was about women.
Interesting.
It was really interesting because it used to floor me because, even though I was getting older, a lot of males would talk about their relationship with women and what kind of relationship they had and a few other things beyond that. But when you had the conversation with white men, it was about money and control and power and, that's what it came down to at the end of the day.
Interesting.
So those two different perceptions or two different understanding in terms of the role of the male.
That is so interesting.
yeah,
The
it
reason
was-
why I'm saying that is majority of white men that have gone to prison for mishandling a relationship with a woman or some weird stuff that they would do, and sometimes I would hear people say, black people don't do that, And I know I want to put a disclaimer out there that this is Kessel Callender's personal
Yeah.
opinion, so it's not a reflection of the next normal, so don't come after me, okay? But you're single and you're with your friends, you're in college. They talk about girls. What were you interested in talking about?
Well, for me, I think in terms of me, and I'm going to go back to when I was working in the sense of my job, when I was working in those days, was something more progressive. Let's look at the world, the situation in the world, discuss, the political agendas of humanity. Like that kind of thing I was looking at.
Right.
And I wanted something a little bit more educational, something more intellectual, than as opposed to this.
You wanted to be stimulated intellectually.
Yeah, in terms of
But from what I've learned about your story, you were a little bit of a wild one out there when you were young, too. And so as much as you wanted to be intellectually stimulated, you had fun.
I did. And that was something.
And where was you thinking then?
Right. Because I always thought, in my perception, that I was very supportive of women, which I was in many ways.
Sure.
And that I valued women, and I had respect for women. And yet, sometimes I was seeing more than one woman at a time. I was, and at a time,
Because you loved women.
I did,
Sure,
and I
still
do. But I had a different understanding now,
Sure.
And the thing is, I was a bodybuilder for many years. I was very big. I'm 6'2", and so interacting with women and having these relationships was easy.
Sure.
So you don't realize how the disrespect comes in so subtly, because you have this power that's quote unquote whatever that looks like, and you can attract women easily, and you can flitter from this one to the next one, and then one day I realized, how could you say you respect women and violate them like this? And I didn't realize the violation was happening because it was so subtle.
Right.
And it was the accepted norm. And so, and most men buy into this stuff. And unless you start to do self-reflection, and start to do a whole new analysis of self,
Sure.
you don't see this.
You can't, because
The world is promoting
when you
it.
look at the world as it is, it's a normal thing. Nowadays, you hardly see a movie without sex or violence in it.
Completely.
And I'm not quite sure who writes or directs these movies all the time. I think what I'd like to find out is, maybe you won't be able to answer this, but What's your interpretation of a woman? Like when you're with your male friends, how do they see us? What does a man see when he looks at a woman? When he looks at me? When he looks at I don't know, whoever other women out there, Beyonce. What are they thinking when they see that? Like, he looks at me, I'm a saint. He looks at his mother, he looks at his grandmother, he looks at Beyonce, he looks at his wife. What do these men see?
You know, I don't know if I could answer for every male, but I think if you ask different people, different men, you'd have different answers for that.
Right.
Some are looking for nurturing, some might be looking for a soulmate. Some might have, I mean, I've had, you know, friends that I've spoke to talk about the soul relation, the spiritual connection. Even when, you know, they're having an intimate time, they speak about this as, you know, the spiritual experience they had. And maybe there is a spiritual experience in it, I'm not sure. But to me, the spiritual experience isn't just about that. There's a massive, it encompasses so many other things in terms of spiritual experience. Respect, care, compassion, equality.
So what do you see when you look at a woman? And I'd like to go back before you came into your spiritual awakening.
Yeah, that's...
because I know a lot has changed in you after that. What do you all see when you look at us?
I saw my ego reflected when I look at you. And what I mean by that is that what made me so aware was that one day I was sitting and realizing, I was asking myself, why do I need a woman in my life? I literally went into this and this after I came to spirituality. Because when I came, I still had the pull to have relationships. And I was thinking, like, why do I need a woman in my life? I can cook, I can clean, which I was taught from a kid. I can sew, I can iron, I can do everything. I didn't need a woman in my life for that, and that's what I'm saying. So based on the man, you can have a different answer, because some men look for somebody to take care of them.
Right.
Someone look for, you know, some men might look for someone who's equal to them.
But before spirituality, how did you all look at us? Like
so
an
this
object?
was the thing. It was, I don't know if I saw it as a woman as an object, but I saw her as a way for my ego to be complete. Meaning, when I met a woman, and I only realized this after, you were looking for someone who says, well, you're such a handsome man, you know, you're such a, and you know, all this thing that comes in, and I was realizing, wait, I wasn't looking for the physical things, but for the emotional, you know, from the emotional level, I was looking for the support, I was looking from, and it was physical in the sense in terms of what I looked like, and how women saw me, and how much relationships I could have at the time, and it built my ego.
So you'd say then, when a man looks at a woman, his ego is activated, not his lust?
Well, that is connected to the
Okay,
ego.
that's connected to the ego.
Because the lust triggers the ego to, in that sense. You know, the lust, because when a woman comes to you, and that lust part starts, and you feel, oh, well, I can have all these women, you know, and it's the lust that is driving you. I mean, I don't know how much men out there really have, like, respect for a woman, respects her intellect, respects, you know, her nurturing powers.
They don't see that much.
This is the part, because the thing that gets triggered, for the attraction for most men. I mean, you know, I used to go into a lot of clubs. Why are you going to a club? Most of the time is to meet a woman, you know. It may turn out to a relationship that is, you know, equal and balanced, where there is that self-respect and respect for them in the other way. But most of the times you're going to find somebody, have a good time.
So this might require another conversation, because I know we're going to go much deeper than where we are right now. But let me try to remember before my days of my awakening. When I looked at a man, it was for protection. And I've always wanted the man to be my friend. Or he doesn't, if you're having an intimate relationship with a man, it's very rare the friendships are there. Now, I think maybe this current generation is different, because I've observed that there's a lot more openness for dialogue and communication to find out what each one needs. But for my generation and my mother's generation and my grandmother's, there was never really an open dialogue. And from what and let me clarify this, which I think is very important for our audience. What I think a man thinks when he looks at a woman is, oh, is she good looking? Does she have a good body? I wonder what she'd be like.
Mm-hmm.
And then bypass that they might have a connection or a friendship or a relationship or an exchange. Then he starts to look at, what are her qualities like? Is she wife material, mother material, or just for one night?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go any further than that. Has there ever been this thought process in you that you really cared about the intellect and the principles and the value of this woman who you might end up with for the rest of your life and build an empire? Do you ever think like that? Because for me, before my spiritual awakening, that's what I thought. I was looking for a partner who I can build an empire with, and we can grow and do a lot.
I'm glad you brought it up, because one of the things, as much as I was speaking about the relationship I had with different women, one of the first things I actually did was be a friend, which was interesting because many of the female partners I had 30 years ago, I still have friendships with today. Quite a few, actually. We mightn't speak every day, their lives go on, but I can chat with them, I can have communication with them. And there's quite a few in my life today still.
Wow.
Who I met. And because one of the things I did, and this is one of the things I did, was because I wasn't looking for a partner as a mother or whatever that case may be, as you were sharing this now. The relationships were based on, listen, this is going to be a relationship. If it moves into the lust part, great. If it doesn't, we'll be friends. And literally that's what I did.
You've kept your friendship.
Yeah, and I've kept the friendship.
But isn't that a rare case? You know, the reason why I thought it was important to have this conversation on The Next Normal is that I feel like you're such a good, rounded man that, you know, any woman would be like, wow, he's like perfect in terms of he's sensitive. He has a stature where he looks like he would protect you. He has a good intellect that he thinks clearly about things. And so these are some of the qualities that I know generally a woman seeks. Now, and you know, when we go into part 2 and so on, I want to go deeper into, you know, do you think, what area of a man's thinking do you think needs changing? What needs to change in the way a man thinks to make him a little bit like you, or to make them more wholesome, more embracing for a woman?
That's a loaded question kind of thing, but but really, you really have to come to know yourself as a being, because the transition and the transformation has to come from deep inside, like really deep inside. And it's not, you know, just a surface experience. It's something that you have to go into yourself. You have to really face yourself on levels that you don't want to face. You have to accept your dark side and your light side, because they're both are existing in the human being. And then you have to come to the acceptance of, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Until you get to that point, there's no real moving on. It's just the same old routine understanding of self. So there has to be a different understanding of me.
And what is that understanding?
Well, from my experience and from, you know, when I came and understood, because this is the beauty of it, that I wasn't a man. I was like, okay. That I was a soul. I was energy. I was power. And that power had to do one thing. It had to love and give everyone the same sense of respect that I was going to give myself. And that was a big turning point for me, because you know, and that's when I came to this realization of I didn't really respect women as much as I thought I did.
Yeah.
Um,
But maybe you weren't in your respect at that time. You were still young.
yeah, I was still trying
Growing.
to figure out, the funny thing is, as a young man growing up, and the male, this thing of the male role, or what a man is taught from a child, I think the violation of the male from birth, and I know I've had people say, "What do you mean?" When you're suppressed from childhood, it's a traumatic experience. You can't cry because in many cultures the man can't cry.
You're
He's a
not supposed
provider,
to.
no emotional, expression. You don't feel, and it's a natural state of who you are. And when that suppression happens to you as a child, and you can't formulate, you have no answers, things are happening internally, and you can't ask because you can't ask your father because what's wrong with you? You're a man. And your poor mother would try to support it, and your father says, he's a man, what are you doing? You want to make him into a woman? And this is a reality.
Yeah.
So when you become an adult now, when you were asking about your perception of what a man should be protecting and stuff like that, and now he's in a relationship where that's expected from him, but you have to deal with emotions, your own as well as your partner.
I thought it was interesting that I'm saying that for me, I looked to a man to be a protector, but also my friend.
Your friend.
So there's an emotional part that I want also in that relationship.
Exactly.
But somebody who can take care of me, who's there for me.
Supportive.
If there's anything that I just can't manage, he's got my back.
And that's the thing, because when that relationship, when the expectation in that relationship happens, and the emotional part, because the emotional part is the biggest part.
Yeah.
Because if you're an educated woman, you'll provide, you'll play
Yeah.
a part. But the emotional part is the toughest part. And when he doesn't understand his own emotions, he can't even come to grips that he's emotional. He can't even come to grips that there's a part of him that needs nurturing too,
That is locked down.
that is suppressed.
Yeah.
How does that come out?
Yeah.
In violence, because that's all he knows. That's all he knows, violence, in terms of how he had to suppress his emotional part, and it's violating the norm
Natural
of
nature of the
the
spirit.
norm and the natural energy of humanity, of the soul.
Wow.
So when now that comes out and you don't know how to manage it, because if you do express it in an emotional state, understanding, then you have some women actually look back and says, "Why are you crying? You're a man," and that happens too.
Yeah. It needs a whole washing, both the male and
The
the female.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I love about Raj Yoga meditation. Once you recognize that you're a soul and the supreme power, all those gender issues become neutral. And we get a chance to bring out the best of whatever gender we're in. We're going to continue with the part 2 because we're going to go deeper into what is it that a man feels when he's with a woman or when he's by himself. Like, what is it that goes in his mind? Is he thinking about career or life? Or how is it that when a man gets involved with a woman, what changes him? Does he change? I've heard in many relationships with women especially, they change a lot in marriages. We're going to talk about that. More to come. You are actually watching The Next Normal. And we're talking about the role of men. We're going to have a series on this to try to have us find a way to understand each other better so that our relationships can work well. So I hope so far you've been enticed. Part 2 is right around the corner. Thank you so much for joining today. Remember, if you want to reduce your attachments, practice loving everyone the same. We'll be right back with Kessel Calendar. Thank you so much. Meditation, intimate experiences with the divine through contemplative practices. A common sentient series by Sacred Stories Publishing. The quieter you become, the more you're able to hear. Rumi. A time to choose.
We find ourselves right now in the age of great transformation, one of the most consequential moments in human history. These are indeed the times that the great prophets and seers throughout the millennia have spoken about. Mankind has experienced and survived many eras of tremendous change, of course, yet with each turn of the spiral, the permutations become more amplified, as if there will be one final revolution of the cycle that turns it all around so we can start anew.